Okay, it's good now. Sure. So good evening, everyone. Thanks for having the patience. You would have witnessed a project team working there in all its dynamics. So again, welcome to Professor Lavognon. Thanks for being with us here today on this special day, International Project Management Day. So it is a distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker to today's distinguished webinar event, Professor Lavognon Ika, an internationally acclaimed scholar, educator, award winner, and thought leader in project management and international development. Professor Ika is a full professor of project management at the Telfer School of Management, University of Ottawa. He also serves as an extraordinary professor at the University of Pretoria and a Carnegie African Diaspora Fellow and a World Bank Fellow. His career bridges continents and disciplines, combining rigorous academic research with practical insights into how complex projects can create lasting public value. His research has appeared in leading international journals in both project management and international development, and has profoundly shaped our understanding of project success, governance, complexity, uncertainty, and public value. For example, he has provided guidance to the Project Management Institute, PMI, in 2024 on how to reframe project success, and for the World Bank as an external advisory panel member on their 2023 results and performance of World Bank Group Report. We're not done there, guys. Professor Ika is also the co-author of the groundbreaking book, Managing Fuzzy Projects in 3D, which redefines how uncertainty and adaptation are managed in complex environments. And he's a co-auditor of the Cambridge Handbook of Project Behavior, which explores how human dynamics and behavior shape project success. He has taught in Canada, Australia, France, Benin, South Africa, Algeria, Lebanon, Morocco, Tunisia, Switzerland, and beyond. He has served as a visiting professor at prestigious institutions, including Schema Business School in France, Swinburne University of Technology, Australia, Tianjin University of Technology, China, and Gimpa, Ghana. In recognition of his exceptional research contributions, Professor Ika is ranked among the top 2 scientists worldwide by the Stanford Elsevier Global Scientists Ranking, underscoring his lasting impact on both theory and practice. As an associate editor for the International Journal of Project Management and the Canadian Journal of Development Studies, he continues to advance global dialogue on how projects can drive sustainable development and institutional transformation. Tonight, he presents on the critical role of project management for resilient development in small island developing states. At a time when our region faces economic uncertainty, climate risk, and institutional challenges, Professor Ika's insights on resilience, adaptation, and multidimensional success are both timely and essential. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Lavognon Ika.
Thanks a lot, Wesley, for your warm introduction. Hello, Trinidad and Tobago. Hello, our friends from small island developing states. My name is Lavognon Ika, and I'm happy to join this webinar. So when Wesley asked me to deliver this workshop, Wesley and of course, Dean Nigel, I could not help ask myself what I can contribute, because I've never published on, small island developing states projects. I never collected data there. I've never published a single paper there, but I take comfort in the fact that I've written extensively on the delivery and management of international development projects, or if you prefer, projects in Africa, notably. So my talk today will be about how we can use adaptive, context-sensitive project management so that we can build resilience and deliver sustainable development in places like TNT. Of course, not all SEEDS states or not all islands are made equal, but they all share a unique development context. Since 1992, the UN suggested that, these island countries present a special case of development. Why? Because they tend to be remote countries, if you want, have limited populations, and people are spread around these islands. And on top of that, as many other countries in this world, these islands, they face what some will call grand challenges, such as unsustainable development. Others will speak about polycrisis, such as climate shocks, small markets, economic dependence, institutional fragility, to name but a few. And others will call all of these challenges mega threats to these countries. Hence, the importance of resilience and the importance of sustainable development for these island countries. And TNT is no exception. Born and raised in Africa, I know far too well how projects can disappoint. We have a bias for hope for projects, but at the same time, there is a bias for despair there. Some would say projects do not work. So I know far too well that projects, they tend to disappoint many on the continent. And TNT and the SEEDS are no exception. So I've devoted 20 years of my research in trying to understand why is it that projects fail and what can be done about it. Based on the insights from these 2 decades of research, the aim of my presentation today, as I was saying, was to show how adaptive, context-sensitive project management can help build not only resilience, but sustainable development. Why? Simply because, as you all know, context matters, and no project is an island, as Professor Matt Engwall would say. So, therefore, we need to understand the peculiar context surrounding the delivery of these projects and be able to use them as a commodity, if you prefer, to create the future. Friends, we live in a project society and economy where project can help create the future, whether it is to build back better, as we saw with the Biden government and many other governments in the Western world, or to save the world from the damages of the mega threats of COVID-19, or simply to deal with the challenge of climate change, or put a billionaire on the moon. We need projects as instruments to create value. Now, there are 7 sublines for projectification. Professor Ben Flubiol, former Oxford professor, would say there are 4: technological, so projects are driven by technological impulse; political drivers; economic drivers; aesthetics drivers; and we can also build projects just for community pride. In my book, Managing Fuzzy Project in 3D, I suggest that there are 2 additional drivers that we don't talk much about in the project management literature. The first one is altruism, which is driven by the idea that we can help others help themselves. This is how, World Bank and other donors will fund projects in places like TNT or in other 6 countries or in Africa, okay, to help themselves, as I just said. Project can be also driven by what I call a desire to rescue, the desire to save the world from damaging threats such as climate change or COVID-19, for instance. And if you consider the unique situation of the seeds country, which tend to face climate shocks and other challenges, I think these two speak very well to the context of TNT and the seeds. But we have a problem, and that problem is that projects tend to underperform and fail, and they confront a five whammy of time overruns, cost blowouts, benefit shortfalls, and stakeholder dismay, if not sustainability shortfalls as well. And the statistics are not rosy at all when it comes to the delivery of these projects and their performance in particular. So a study of capacity building projects suggests that these public sector reform projects, for instance, you have many of these in the seats, right? A study of these type of projects suggests that 70% do not deliver their capacity building intent. Professor Andrews from Harvard would suggest that 1 out of 2 of these projects do not deliver their intent either. And the World Bank's own databases suggest that roughly 20% of projects underperform or fail. My own study using 3,000 projects from the World Bank suggests that the rate of failure is around 18%. And in places like Nigeria and Ghana, research has shown that 19,000 of projects are abandoned in Nigeria and 14K projects are unfinished in Ghana. That's too much. So you see, already we have not only a seeds development paradox, but at the same time, we have a development project paradox. So high hopes, but disappointing outcomes, or if you prefer, frequent underperformance. There is even a word out there that sums it up when it comes to the Pacific countries. So if you, that's the word Pacific development paradox. What does it mean? It simply means that in the Pacific, project failure rates are higher or twice as high as elsewhere, which is an indictment of project failure, for instance, in the Pacific. This needs to be changed. Now, let us start with a couple of real-life examples. Do you recognize this project? So this is the government plaza, campus plaza here. This project has had its fair share of challenges. It has been long idle, as you know, in TNT after completion, and that's a big problem. How about this one? I know you guys there, you love cricket a lot, the very way I love football, right? I'm talking about soccer here. So here is the Brian Lara Stadium, a flagship stadium of cricket in the world. And as you know, this project has had lots of challenges, but in the end, it was able to host a number of games of cricket. We will talk about that project a little bit more later. So you have the Piarco International Airport, and there was an inquiry about this project. Corruption was involved, as you know, and that is a challenge because it was talked about, this project was talked about in the news a lot there. How about this one? So the this one is, if my memory serves me well, is the Scarborough Hospital project, right? So that's a project that where you have multiple contractor changes, procurement delays, and quality issues. How about this one? This is the Solomon Highway project. This project experienced time and cost overruns, yet was able to deliver value for citizens. So any committers, anybody, using the highway, commuting through the highway, will tell you that it reduced journey times. So this project was able to deliver value and provide connectivity and development. So these are just examples of projects, and you will see some were able to hit their goals when it comes to the delivery of value, and many did miss the mark. And the pattern is all common. So most of these projects, they tend to be good on paper, but poor in practice when it comes to their delivery. They face weak procurement oversight, shifting political priorities, if not governments, and lack of continuity and inefficiency. They tend to meet sometimes technical goals, but they fail to deliver social impact. And that's a big problem. If they fail to deliver economic and social impact, then how on earth can we be able to deliver development and sustainable development in particular? And as you know, they face not only legitimacy issues, governance gaps, but also equity concerns when it comes to their value distribution. Because what's the point of building these projects if they are not going to be able to help vulnerable people that desperately needs the benefits and outcomes coming from this project? Because if we can't get these vulnerable people and groups can't get these benefits, we are nowhere near close to sustainable development. Now, let us pause a little bit and ask ourselves, how do we measure success? Because we were talking about, project failure. Some projects were successful, other did fail. But how do we measure success? So using, World Bank funded projects, let's say a sample of 200, World Bank funded projects, I was able to showcase that, to demonstrate, I should say, that you can measure success through two dimensions. The first is a short-term kind of dimension, very instrumental and managerial. It's all about time, meeting the objectives, and delivering the project within budget. The second one is more interesting when it comes to development or sustainable development. It's all about delivering a project that suits the country needs, that's relevance for the country, suits the beneficiary needs, that's relevance for the beneficiaries, because what the beneficiaries want is not necessarily what the government wants. Okay, and also making sure that the project is able to deliver institutional capacity and sustainability as its result will continue long after completion. So that's roughly how we measure project success. It's more complicated than that, but these two dimensions give you a sense. Now, even if you understand that project success can be measured along a short-term dimension and a long-term dimension, well, project success changes over time. So to be able to understand better success, I provided in my research, one that is published in the flagship journal of international development. I'm talking about world development. And the other one is the book, Managing Fuzzy Projects, that Wesley was referring to. I propose that project success falls within 4 quadrants, or a 4x4 matrix. So you have a category of projects that fall within the first quadrant, and that quadrant includes those projects that failed with regards to the plan, but meets their business case targets. A good example is the Solomon Hoshoy Highway projects, not Academy, sorry, highway project. So that project, like I said, did not deliver when it comes to the plan, not deliver when it comes to time, did not deliver when it comes to cost, but the value was delivered in terms of reducing journey times and providing connectivity and development, like I said. So these kind of projects are what is called a hiding hand. What is a hiding hand? These are projects for which we underestimate time and cost and difficulties. Yet, when issues emerge or obstacles emerge, then we rise to the challenge and overcome them through a sort of untapped creativity. And in the end, as Professor Albert Hirschman would say, we finally stumble into success, as was the case for the Solomon Highway project. Back to the notion of hiding hand a little bit later. So that's the first category. How about the second category? The second category is full of projects that deliver according to the plan. So they meet the plan targets, which is a great managerial success, but fail to deliver when it comes to the business case targets. This is the case of the Prime Minister's official residence and diplomatic center. So that project delivered within time and cost. But in the end, the residence was having issues when it comes to leaking floors and mold. And there was a need of more than 5 million to touch up to the residence and fix these issues, including leaking floors, like I said. So this is the kind of project that I call in my writings, the operation was a success, but the patient died. That's not exactly how we can get to sustainable development, okay? So we have another category which is more interesting, which I'm gonna call the holy grail of any project leaders out there. This is the category of projects that are all around successes, which means that they are delivered within time, they meet their budget targets, and at the same time, they deliver value in terms of business case success, for instance. This is the case of the Claude Noel Highway project, for instance, in Tobago. Other projects do not have an interesting fate. Quite the contrary, their fate is bad, and that's not good at all for development. They cost a lot, like boondoggles, but in the end, they don't deliver much value, or they don't deliver enough value as per the business case. This is the case of the 2.2 billion Tamana Intake Park. The project did not meet the budget target, and did not meet the value targets either, because it was not able to spur innovation in the park. So the Intake Park innovation that was expected at the beginning of the project, at the outset, was nowhere near the levels that the planners predetermined for that project. This is what Professor Ben Pouviol from Oxford and the late Nobel Prize winner in economics, Daniel Kahneman, will call a planning fallacy. So these projects, they epitomize the tendency to under-deliver and over-promise in projects. So in a research about 200 World Bank projects, I was able to show that in practice, we are very good at monitoring for the short-term aspect of success. So I'm talking about the first dimension, the short-term dimension of success, project management success, delivery of the project within time and cost, for instance. But we are not that good when it comes to managing for impact or managing for development. So we are not good when it comes to making sure that our project deliver better rates of success when it comes to international development. So that's the challenge that we face in practice. And why is it that we are having these challenges? And what are the reasons why projects fail to deliver? Well, you have hundreds of reasons why projects fail to deliver. We can't list all of these reasons why projects fail to deliver, but I would suggest in my research back to 2012, published in the Project Management Journal, the second ranked journal in our field, I suggest that most of the development project management issues fall within three problem areas. The first one includes what I call structural issues: history, geography, politics, and so on. And the second one includes institutional issues like corruption, lack of capacity. And the third one includes issues such as poor design, cost overruns, okay, and failure to deal with complexity and uncertainty. But again, even if you were to have all of these three problem areas on your radar, it is still challenging to address all the problems in these three categories. That's the reason why in the same paper, I suggested that we should focus our attention selectively on 4 project management traps for development. The first one is one size fits all. Okay, we tend to think that all projects are similar, for instance, in terms of complexity and uncertainty, and therefore we can use the same tools and mostly imported tools from the West to deal with the challenges posed by complexity and uncertainty in these projects. Still, context matter. And you see, that's where, that's the reason why, many projects, they experience a gap between expectations and performance targets. The second trap is what I call accountability for results. So we are good at tracking for results, but we are not good at managing for results. So we fall in that trap and we spend much of our time in the field. I'm talking about in practice, I'm talking about project managers, for instance. They spend much of their time filling in what is called in the literature as smiling sheets, or if you prefer, filling in forms for reporting, meeting the reporting requirements. So they do the reporting for the sake of reporting because they would like to please the funder, because the funder wants reporting. So therefore you report. And in the end, you don't take much risk and you don't talk to key stakeholders in the field. So that's accountability for result trap. The third one is lack of project management capacity. No need to belabor the point. The fourth one is not underplaying culture or not taking into consideration culture, the local culture and local context. No need to belabor the point. You all know about that in TNT. So these are 4 traps that most of the projects fall into. So for instance, a case that I really love is the Chad Cameroon Pipeline Project, which is a $4 billion project. In my city, all over here, we struggled to deliver a $2 billion LRT project on time. This project was delivered back to 2003 in a country that lacks capacity, lack technological capacity or technical capacity when it comes to delivering a pipeline. I'm talking about Chad, a landlocked country at the heart of Africa, which was having issues when it comes to kids dying out of malnutrition, and the World Bank decided to do something about that problem. But how would they get there, okay, and deal with global poverty reduction? They decided to use the pipeline as a scheme to reduce poverty and improve Chad's institutional capacity. Of course, Chad was considered a rogue country, and no international company or no international business would like to do business with a rogue country like Chad. So the World Bank needs to put the money where their mouth is, so they invested in the project. So that was roughly $4 billion project, and the pipeline was as long as 1,000 kilometers from Chad to Cameroon, because because Chad is a landlocked country, did not have access to sea. Therefore, Cameroon was involved with their access to sea as a neighboring country. So the consortium was led by ExxonMobil, and the project took, 6 years for its planning and 4 for its delivery. And guess what? Like I said, it was delivered on time. The project was delivered on time, but it was not successful in terms of development. Why? Because the Deby government at the time faced threats from rebels and therefore used the oil money to get rid of rebels instead of purchasing education or health services to the poor. So you see, value distribution was not there. And I shall say that the consortium was able to recoup their money. So the return on investment was there in a couple of years. The government was able to, despite all the pressures coming from, all the governance pressures coming from the World Bank, they were able to get rid of rebels. So for the government, it was a successful project. For ExxonMobil and the consortium, it was a great project economically. But for the poor or the marginalized or the vulnerable people in Chad, it was a failed project. So you see already that we have lots of complexity in a project like the Chad Cameroon project. Now, how do we deal with this complexity? Well, you have 3 stances. The first is that you will know it when you see it. I call it the ostrich effect, in the sense that you put your heads in the sand and you look away as a practitioner, and then you simply wait and see. So that's not an approach that will help you get there, because when complexity hits, it's too late. And that will have consequences when it comes to the bottom line of your project. Or you may choose to kind of screen the sources of project complexity one after the other. So for instance, you may look for, structural complexity, say the extent to which the project scope is big, for instance. When you do that, it's good. You have the scope of your project on, on your radar. That's wonderful. But how about uncertainty when things start happening, and therefore your events start happening or emerging, and therefore you have to grapple with the changing environment in which the project is being delivered. So you see, this is reductionist in terms of an approach, and therefore it would be a little bit more difficult for you to chase all these sources of complexity and their repercussions on the project performance or delivery at the same time. So that's a challenging kind of approach. So that's the reason why you need more established, more holistic kind of complexity approaches. There are a few of these holistic complexity approaches available out there in the project management theory and practice. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you one example of such holistic view of complexity in the literature. There are many, but this one is useful because it's simple to understand. So, and that's a typology, or yes, that's a typology that a practitioner can quickly get and apply. So this model would suggest that there are 3. This model built by authors such as Miller and Turner and others would suggest that there are 3 manifestations of complexity. Wesley is very much aware of that, because he tends to play with these 3 dimensions of complexity. So the first manifestation of complexity is all about structural. It's all about the scope and the interrelationship between the different components within the project. So if you apply this model to the Chad Cameroon pipeline project, you realize that you have a huge pipeline, very long, 1,000 kilometers, as I was saying, a $4 billion one. And there were, guess what? 40 scope changes, so 40 changes to the pipeline route during the course of the project. That's a lot. So it tells you about structural complexity, or if you prefer, what's in the belly of the beast. Now, so much about structural complexity. How about socio-political complexity, where stakeholder clash and the differing expectations lead to conflicts in terms of perspectives and value? Okay, so you have international and donor politics that was playing a role in the Chad Cameroon pipeline project over soft loans. So these are loans with lower kind of interest rates that government can pay back in 25 to 40 years time sometimes. And there were 50K letters opposing the project in the Washington, D.C. sky, basically because people were against the project for environmental and social reasons. And Germany was against the soft loans, even though the president of the World Bank at the time, Jim Wolfensohn, promised soft loans to Chad, because the president of the World Bank needed re-election, then Germany was able to win the battle, the political battle, and therefore Chad was not given soft loans in the end. So that speaks volume to socio-political complexity. You also have emergent complexity in the sense of uncertainty, things happening, things emerging, things arising in the project, in the shifting environment in which the project is happening. So for instance, to give you one example, Shell and ELF, because of the complexity of the project, they were interested at the beginning, but they pull out. Elections happened. Government uses the oil money to fight rebels, like I said before. These are just examples of uncertainty or emergent complexity. Now, let us move from complexity to resilience, because, the task that Wesley asked me to do is to make sure that we make the link between projects, development projects, their complexity, and their resilience, and how we can manage complexity so that we build resilience and contribute to sustainable development. So there are, roughly speaking, two manifestations of resilience. The first one is you need to be aware of your environment, okay, to be able to provide proactive responses when the environment starts shifting. So you need to be aware of the systems components. So that's the first one. The second one that you are all aware is that you need to have built-in adaptive capacity so that you can recover from disruptions in the projects. When I mean disruptions, an example is COVID-19 happening and disrupting your project. Another example is Trump tariffs. So I had a keynote at Northeastern University on on geopolitical uncertainty and how it can lead to project failure. So all of a sudden you have your project and Trump is raising tariff on your country, and therefore your project might not be that profitable anymore, or your project might be forced to stop. Okay, or promoters of the project will simply abandon the project. So these are two key manifestations of resilience. Now, how to deal? The first question that our friend Wesley and Dean Nigel asked me to answer: how to deal with complexity to build resilience? That was the question that was the focus of my collaborator and former PhD student, a professor at one of the universities in South Africa. So she did her PhD at the Schema Business School, and we wrote a white paper based on the results of her work, which focus on 4 case studies in Africa. So 2 infrastructure projects, the HSC University project, a wonderful university that I visited there in Ghana, and the $259 million Kazungula Bridge in Zambia, plus 2 capacity building projects. The first one is the Northern Education Initiative Plus project in Nigeria, and the second one is the Africa Risk Capacity Program. So, in a nutshell, what did we find? We find that there were a number of structural complexity factors, like multiple funders with different reporting requirements. We found that there were multiple stakeholders with differing expectations, nothing new under the sun. And we also found that there were major changes in the scope of the work. So nothing new under the sun. These are things that you will already know. Now, what is interesting is that we probe which project management approaches and tools were useful to navigate complexity. And we found that, yes, project stakeholder engagement, environment assessment tools, project planning, monitoring, evaluation, and project governance mechanism were useful, or project governance structures, that's the word I was looking for, were useful to reduce complexity. But throughout the 4 cases, so that's the major find, they were useful, but they were only useful to some extent, okay? Because despite all of these, they were not good enough to deal with the disruptions that the project confronted, for instance, COVID-19. Because some of the data were collected, after COVID-19 hit. Okay, so disruptions still happen despite the effectiveness of some of these tools when it comes to navigating or reducing complexity. So they were, to some extent, effective, but not good enough to deal with the disruptions. So that's where you need a resilient mindset and an adaptive capacity mindset to be able to deal with these disruptions. And what did we find? So we find that the projects that were doing well, they did well when it comes to data collection. So you need to have a robust system of data collection there. And you need to make sure that you put together an early warning system that tell you what's going on in the project so that you prepare for anything that will happen in the project or any changes in the environment surrounding the project. And we also find that being aware is not good enough, or having a sound data collection system or an interpretation system or early warning systems in presence is not good enough. What you need persistence to be able to deal with the disruptions. You need stakeholder engagement, and sometimes indigenous knowledge application to be able to deal with the challenges. And sometimes you need to find newer ways of doing things or innovating. That's what is called transformation in the theory of resilience here. And, and therefore you have to switch from the initial approach in your plan to a full-blown or a newer kind of, a completely new approach. So that's one is called transformation. For instance, faced with COVID-19 in a project, in one of these projects, you could not, the student could not go into the classroom anymore, and therefore you have to switch to online or radio, TV, teaching and learning. That's a good example of transformation. So that means that your initial plan is no more fitting because the environment has changed a lot, and therefore you need to adapt. So you see, awareness plus adaptive capacity, they give you a good sense of how you can provide resilience practices that can help deal with the complexity that many projects face in the field. Now, I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to, at this point, I would like to talk a little bit about theory here, because I believe that theory can help us deal with some of the complex issues that we face when it comes to development, sustainable development, and resilience there. So I would suggest that my 5 hands framework explains how project behavior evolves. What do I mean by project behavior? Very quickly, it is the fact that projects tend to take a complicated life of their own. They take complex outturns and systematically deviate from the assigned plans. Okay, so I have 5 hands there of project behavior. The first hand is the benevolent hiding hand. So remember, we were talking about the hiding hand before, and I gave you an example of a Solomon Highway project that experiences lots of difficulties when it comes to, the delivery of the project, including cost overruns. But in the end, the project team was able to rise to the challenge with their resourcefulness and problem-solving capacities, and therefore, the hiding hand speaks to creativity under constraint, or creativity when you face challenges, okay, when you face unexpected challenges. And this is unexpected creativity. You also have the planning fallacy, remember? And talking about the planning fallacy, the example that I used before was the Prime Minister's official residence project. The project, no, that was not, no, I used the, no, sorry, my mistake. I used the Tamana Intech Park project as an example of the planning fallacy, if you remember, okay? Because that project was not delivered within time, it was not delivered within cost, and in the end, value was not there either. So in the case of a project like that, you might have what he call the malevolent hand, in the sense that ignorance will be bad for such projects and political interference might happen, and you might face what is called elite capture, because people are just taking advantage of projects for profiteering gains. And you have another subtle hand in sociology, which is called the passive hand. So that's bureaucratic inertia and avoidance. It's like, people see they're using it's the ostrich effect again. So they see problems with the project, and then they decide to wait and see because they don't want to take risk. So it's all about risk avoidance and inertia. And you have, in contrast, you have a protective hand, basically where, champions, they put their forces together and they decided to save the project, and they will try desperately to shield the project against, for instance, politics, or against what is happening in the media when you have a high public scrutiny going on a project. So they put together a political kind of buffering there so that they can shield the project away from what's going on in the media and politics. And to all of these existing hands, I added another hand, which is called the fifth hand. And that fifth hand helps you adapt. It's the fifth hand that provides resilience and help you adapt in changing circumstances in the project. So with that fifth hand theory, the idea is that you need to embrace complexity instead of fighting it. And for a project, it's not about having perfect plan. It's all about, like we saw in my collaborator study of physics, it's all about having adaptive capacity and resilience, showcasing adaptive capacity and resilience. Quick examples of the fifth hand. So I already covered all of these hands. Quick example of it. So the Solomon Highway project, ignorance was in the end good for it. Okay, initially ignorance was not good for it, but in the end, ignorance was good for the Solomon Highway project because it stumbled into success in the end and delivered value in reduced journey times, as I said before. So that's what Hirschman will call the hiding hand. So in a nutshell, Wesley, how am I doing with regard to time?
You're not doing too bad, Prof. I know you're almost wrapping up now. You're not doing too bad.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So when it comes to the hiding hand, Professor Albert Hirschman will say, okay, the hiding hand hides difficulties from us through what he called creative error and make us stumble into achievement, you see? So ignorance is bad, is not bad. Ignorance is good in the end. It turns to be good in the end. And you have, so these stakeholders that will believe in the hiding hand, I will call them Pollyannas. They tend to be over-optimistic stakeholders and think that ignorance can be good for projects. And I demonstrate that using a sample of 200 projects in one of my papers. If you consider a project like the Tamana Intech Park project, here it's quite clear that in the end, ignorance was bad for the project because the project was not able to deliver value. So that deserves a name and an elaboration. Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman would say that's the planning fallacy at work. Okay, because people were over optimistic about the prospect of the project, and the project, as Oxford professor Ben Frubiel would suggest, end up with a double whammy of cost overruns and benefit shortfalls. Why? Because creativity is not going to come to the rescue, like in the case of the hiding hand. So these are kind of Cassandras, the Cassandras of projects. They believe that ignorance is bad for projects, and it tends to lead to failure most of the time. And they will say, over-optimism is not good for the project, or optimist bias is not good for the project. And by the way, what is the extent to which our projects face optimist bias? I was able to showcase in a sample of almost 3,000 projects, World Bank funded projects, that 6 out of 10 projects are prone to optimist bias. And that comes at a cost because it reduces odds of success by roughly 20% at maximum. How about this project? This is the Lara Cricket Stadium. Well, this project, as you know, it's a mix of failure and success. It went from $270 million to $1 billion. Okay, but in the end, although the stadium was not ready and missed the World Cup, in the end it became a flagship stadium for in the country. So you see, there were instances of hiding hand here, because in the end they rise to a challenge, they overcome the obstacles and deliver something that works. But there were also instances of planning fallacy, malevolent hand, because the Auditor General report suggests that the delays on top of the scope changes, there were delays due to political and financial interest. So some stakeholders were trying to gain advantage or take advantage from the project for profiteering reasons. So that's what I'm calling the fifth hand theory here, in fact. And the fifth hand theory suggests that, well, ignorance can be both good and bad in the project, hence the mixed failure, as you see. Now, to wrap up, so the fifth hand might be an historical theory of project behavior because it can explain why is it that we know how and why projects fail and yet they still repeatedly fail. So the hiding hand will say the project might succeed despite its initial irrationality because of untapped creativity. So the project from an historical standpoint become a ritual more than a calculated action plan and can mobilize people even if capacities are limited. The malevolent hand is the dark side of projects. Think about corruption, think about strategic misrepresentation, think about elite capture for profiteering gains like it happens in the Lara Cricket Stadium. And the passive hand, actors will follow the rules or put their heads in the sand or look away or wait and see. That's inertia. And inertia is related to the institutional lens where they adopt best practices without real ownership just for legitimacy reasons. Okay? And the protective hand, these are champions that protect the project, shield the project against politics or devastating media scrutiny, and learn from their failures so that they can build capacity to deal with the challenges of subsequent projects. And finally, you have the fifth hand, which suggests, like I said before, that it's not all about project management is not all about having a perfect plan, but showing adaptive capacity and resilience. Now, the question is, how do we deal with complexity to build resilience? This framework can help. So you see on the left, you have the structural, socio-political, and emergent dimension of complexity. On the right, as a response to complexity, we have our usual project management practices, but you also need the resilience practices of awareness and adaptive capacity, as I showed before. So I'm going to skip this one and suggest that context matters in our projects, because we need to ask ourselves, in what circumstances does the project that we are working on, does the project that we are tasked to deliver would work? So my research was able to show that for public sector reform projects, capacity building projects, you need high levels of collaboration, commitment, alignment, and adaptation for these projects to work. And some projects will work under some circumstances, and others will fail under the same circumstances. So watch out for context. Finally, key takeaway for project leaders. I have 10 key takeaways for you. The first, plan, but expect the unexpected. Understand context, as I was saying. Cultivate adaptive and learning cultures. Protect team from destructive political presence, like in the protecting hand. Foster genuine local participation. Measure success through long-term transformation and impact. Move from coercive to enabling oversight. Incentivize learning rather than mere compliance. Value hybridity for balancing control and creativity. And holding the five hands framework. So finally, the promise of the fifth hand. So you might have success in SAIDS if you are able to marry good planning with good adaptive capacity. So the fifth hand is a metaphor for managing between hope and despair, and development project can build resilience when we learn. So that would be my last word here. Hope I did not abuse the time.
Yes, wow. So much information there, so much enlightening information, Professor. I mean, what can I say? When we look at your work that you have done with that model, after you've explained so much about success and failure and the problems we've had in the past, by clearly defining what project success is and what project management success is, you went into that area of complexity, and of course, so much in complexity, because when I listened to you, I saw so much in complexity, but then you came with that model from that white paper where you looked at resilience, adaptability, and project management tools together with the complexity itself, and how I would imagine in emergent complexity, you would have so much of these capabilities, project management skills you can have there as well. So I don't want to belabor that point. I mean, you've given us quite an extensive amount there that we can look at. I have some student questions here, Prof, that I'll probably just feel about 2 or 3. so that you can give us your feedback. I hope it's not too much of your time as well. The first one I have, Professor Ika, based on your international research and experience, can you share examples of how other countries have successfully used project management to build resilience and sustainability? And this is the area of concern, particularly in overcoming, the bureaucracy and the resource challenges that they may have. And what can Trinidad and Tobago learn from that and adapt or adopt to improve our long-term project outcomes?
Okay. Thanks a lot for the question. This is a great question. I will pick up two examples, and I will refer to the op-ed that you just published, Wesley, which includes, a couple of other examples for any potential readers out there. So the first is the Indonesia, which developed a centralized digital online platform for project approvals to reduce bureaucratic delays and attract investment. So that's a good example there.
Oh, I see.
A second example is New Zealand. In their disaster recovery projects, they use project management so that they can deal with critical route repairs, okay? And streamline the critical route repairs, because when you face disaster, you need to streamline road repairs.
I see.
Okay, so they do that, and they did that, and they did it in such a way that they would engage, where we have an ongoing kind of stakeholder engagement, a process, and use adaptive plans. So these are just two examples in Indonesia and New Zealand, and I'm not taking those high-income countries like the US and so on, and I'm doing that on purpose. Okay.
Yeah. Very relevant.
So basically, we have so much to learn from, resilience and adaptive capacity in a nutshell. And we also need early warning systems and systems that can help us when it comes to, accelerating projects.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Thank you for that, Prof. And we'll move straight on. So we have another question here, Prof, looking at from your presentation, it is clear that in the Caribbean, many projects are driven by altruistic or rescue motivations, whether it's addressing poverty, improving social conditions, or responding to disasters and national emergencies. However, these projects often fall short of their long-term promise because implementation tends to focus on completion rather than sustainable value. You also highlight that bridging this gap requires the adaptive governance, stronger institutional capabilities, and learning mechanisms. You keep touching on that. That keeps the business case relevant throughout the project life cycle. So we tend to not connect the business case with the project execution oftentimes. This echoes what we've seen locally in initiatives like the Government Campus Plaza, where the infrastructure was developed, but its full developmental contribution wasn't clearly measured or realized. I think up to today, that's a problem. Given these realities and the examples you shared from your other contexts, how can we strengthen institutional learning and governance adaptation so that projects continue to create value well beyond the physical completion? Because we kind of that where we project completed, it looks good, it's a bit of a failure, but we could rescue it, right? What specific capability building or feedback mechanisms have proven effective elsewhere that could be localized here?
That's a wonderful question, and that's a question that many countries struggle with, Wesley, and you know that very well, okay? And many project managers, if not project sponsors as well, struggle with that. Here is the deal. My research on capacity building projects has shown that capacity building happens at 3 levels. The first is individual level, through trainings, for instance, project management training. Okay, let us learn how to plan a project, or let us learn how to build a business case. Okay? Sure. Or let us learn, how to write a project charter properly.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the first one. The second level is the organizational level. where you're talking about organizational capabilities, where you put together, for instance, project offices so that you streamline the delivery of the portfolio of projects within the organization in terms of monitoring, for instance. And you can use that experience as a learning function as well. But that's at the organizational level. And you have a most difficult level, which is the institutional or society level. That's where it gets even more messier.
Socio-political.
Deliver. So you see, achieving targets of capacity building at the individual level is achieving targets at the organizational level. If we put resources, we invest resources there at specific organizational levels. That's doable. Achieving, let us say, institutional capacity at the society level, that's the challenge that many countries in the developing world have. It's a long-term project in itself.
Sure.
Okay, so how do we get there? Like I said before, you need capacity building initiatives, and you need high levels of communication, high levels of engagement, high levels of commitment, and so on and so forth to be able to deliver these public sector reform or initiatives.
Yeah, definitely, Prof. So that's making a pitch there. I hope Nigel is on, because it's making a pitch for us to continue our programs, get people to enroll into the programs, build their capacity in terms of individual capacities. In Trinidad, we have what you call state-owned enterprises. And I think we have just about 50 state-owned enterprises. So at the organizational level there, we have these companies that go towards the projects, they do the execution, but sometimes there's a misplaced focus because they're not too focused on project delivery. They're focused on mitigating corruption, which is good, through the procurement legislation. And then sometimes we go into that trap of just compliance because we don't want to run foul of the procurement legislation, even though the procurement legislation allows us to experiment with the fifth hand, which is to take creative projects rather than just those checkbox projects or compliance
that's
projects.
A great point. You see, like I said, one of the key takeaways suggested that we should not be focusing on compliance. And remember, I talk about accountability for result trap. Right?
Yes.
So if our focus is just on compliance, then we miss the boat when it comes to value delivery. And if we can't deliver value, then sustainability is not going to come. Sustainable development is not going to be there.
So true, because the Solomon Hochoi Highway was a different type of project that needed that embracing of creativity because there was so much unexpected. It was virgin ground. It's the first project of that nature. So you could not just go with that tick box. You had to look more towards creativity, knowing the different type of procurement methods to use, of course, to control the budget and the time. And of course, placing that emphasis on the value, on the end results. But I see Nigel has come on here, but I just want to get one more question in. We can stay here all night, right, Nigel?
Yeah, you know how to manage your deal. Wesley, you know how to manage your deal, it seems.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
That's institutional capacity.
Thank you, sir. I have one more for you. Elizabeth here has this one. It's more wanting to hear about your journey. I'll just merge two questions in one, because we also read about you, Prof, on that Africa magazine, Executive CEO magazine. So the question here is, what key lessons, values, ethical principles does Professor Ika emphasize for aspiring project managers, particularly in learning from failure, adapting to change? Of course, we read your journey and making the personal sacrifices necessary to achieve lasting success and impact. And to add with that, how does your personal experiences and professional journeys, including challenges, motivations, and achievements in life and research journey, we've seen your struggles there as well, Professor. Thanks for sharing it with us. How has that shaped your leadership style, approach to resilience, an ability to balance your academic and real world project management?
That's a wonderful question, and one
Yes.
that is really
Good
meaningful
student.
to me.
Mhm.
And I would suggest that, my mom never went to school. I'm going to start
Oh.
with that. Okay.
I see.
My mom never went to school. And I really find that school can help you get the education that can help open the world and, open the world, access to world. It's like a window onto the world for you. So I use education as a window onto the world.
Thank you, sir.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is do work that is meaningful to you. When I started doing my PhD, people were doing work on construction projects. Others were doing work on research and development or innovation projects. Still others were working on IT projects. I said to myself, Lavagnon, you're not an engineer by any stretch of imagination. You're not in research and development. You're not really in IT. So does any of these fields speak to you? I said no. Okay. Then I thought about it, and then I said to myself, you've seen or you heard about projects that failed to deliver value for much needed value for people in your own country. Okay, so why not focus on these type of projects? Hence, I did a thesis on international development projects. The third thing that I would like to say is that resilience is key here, and I'm going to stop there. I can give you a longer answer, in another call. Resilience is key here because the thing that many people do not know about my own journey is that after 4.5 years, I was able to submit my thesis, my PhD thesis.
Yeah.
It was rejected. Not too many people are aware of that. Okay? Not too many people are aware of that. It was rejected, not because I was lazy or, it was useless or meaningless, not at all. Simply because, reviewers wanted something else in the thesis. And, one reviewer was pushing me towards more development economics, even though I have 100 pages of development economics literature review there in the thesis. So that's one. Then the committee changed, because my supervisors were not happy about the reviewer that were pushing us towards development economics. Yeah. So they push out one of the reviewer and had to reconfigure the whole committee. Now that they have to reconfigure the whole committee, then it means that I did not have many people that were knowledgeable of international development. And my thesis already became suspicious because it was rejected initially, right?
Yes.
So reviewers came up with issues from a methodological standpoint. And I had 1 year to do the groundwork, not the groundwork, the grind.
Yeah.
And in the end, I was able to surmount, to overcome all these challenges and place papers in some of the top journals there and win awards even before I finish my thesis. So that's resilience. So these topics of complexity and resilience, they speak to my own life.
Yes.
Okay. And these are things that I've experienced in my own PhD project. I'm going to stop there for the sake of time.
Yes, thank you for sharing that personal journey. Of course, I know Elizabeth and Adana would be very pleased to have heard that from your end, Professor. So I'll just pass over to Nigel now. Yes, Nigel?
Sure. Thanks very much, Wesley and Professor Ika. There are so many things I want to say, but I know time is against us. So I will use the opportunity to express my vote of thanks to Professor Ika, Wesley, and the entire team. Good evening, everyone. And I take the opportunity to wish the entire team, webinar team here today, over 60-something viewers on our YouTube channel, Happy International Project Management Day 2025. I am Nigel, the Dean for Project Management Studies at Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. and it's my distinct pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this engaging webinar session delivered by Professor Ika from the University of Ottawa here this evening. I sincerely thank the professor for delivering a thought-provoking discussion on how project management can really shape resilient economies in small island developing states. Your presentation was certainly contextualized to our local frame here in Trinidad and Tobago. So many local projects you highlighted, the ETEC project, the Brian Lara Stadium, the Solomon Hochoy Highway, and what strategies could be used to navigate those types of project complexities, and even using the five hands framework for greater project success. I think so. The entire team was very busy hanging on to your every word and taking notes on how project management can be used to boost economies and the quality of life in a social justice frame in our Caribbean context, and certainly here in our twin island state of Trinidad and Tobago. I must say, from the moment Wesley made that initial contact with you, right, you were so willing to spare precious moments from your active research schedule, despite time zone challenges as well too with us, right, to really spend time on this exciting topic. And your willingness has, certainly multiplied exponentially. My mother always told me, every day, write a page in my journal of gratitude. And I think, after meeting you, the entire college and I will be writing many pages and many chapters long after this webinar. Thank you, sir. The college and I are very much deeply humbled by your time spent here today on this very fitting occasion of International Project Management Day 2025. Wesley, I thank you for making this stakeholder connection.
Sure.
Project management is at the very best, right, with this demonstration of stakeholder management. And what a rewarding moment it might mean for you, Wesley, to moderate a session as a PhD student with the professor. To the lecturers,
definitely.
Yeah, definitely, Wesley. To the lecturers, the students, project management experts, enthusiasts, right, we thank you for chiming in through your diverse smart devices. I thank you for your presence, your early confirmation of attendance, and the many questions, long questions that you all asked the professor, right? From Prof's presentation, we can glean valuable tactics in addressing project complexity and using the five hands frameworks to confront the many socio-economic challenges that we have here in the Caribbean, address various gaps in private and public sector projects. We are dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa recovery there, right? The infrastructure dimension, that socio-economic dimension that storm has, that hurricane has brought to Jamaica. We are dealing with geopolitical tensions right here between Guyana, Venezuela, and us here in Trinidad and Tobago, very close to home, all within a spirit of greater well-being and greater social distributive justice. Thank you, Doc, for this engaging and thought-provoking presentation. Now we are ready to act, Professor, and I thank you, Professor Ika, for being this change agent. Very fitting on this auspicious day of International Project Management 2025. I think we had a good presentation. I know, Prof, we have been speaking about holding an international conference next year, very early in 2026, in that first quarter of the calendar year. I am thinking, Prof, we are very soon to launch our diploma in public sector project management. And I know you have this international dimension. Probably we can have you here in Trinidad and Tobago to really anchor this program for us. And possibly we can collaborate at the graduate level as well to co-deliver a particular program. I would like to thank the team for chiming in here. I think, Wesley, we did good. All right, I'll simplify.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think we did very good. Professor Ika, how would you rate us in terms of?
Oh, excellent. So, thank you very much for being so kind with me, and many thanks to Wesley for the invite. And he said nice things about you, Dean Nigel, and I was not surprised at all. Based on what I can see now, I'm not surprised at all. Project management is, like I said, is a tool or an instrument to an end. So let us use it to make the world a better place.
Indeed, indeed.
Certainly.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Thank you.
that goes through capacity building.
Yes.
And your institution has a role to play in that mix.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof. There. This has been a wonderful experience, and I think we look forward for another webinar session and greater things to come, as we forge our relationship. Thanks to the entire team. And Wesley, I think we can say jointly, have a good evening, everyone. Prof?
Yes. Thank you again, Professor. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.